Thank you, Senator Rubio. We're going to do a round of questions. We'll go 7 minutes since we have a secretary here. And I'm going to start. One of the things that you mentioned, and admittedly, what we're dealing with here is a large number of subjects. I want to focus on one that Senator Shaheen and I have worked together on, and that's the Syria matter. Thank you and the President for suspending or lifting the sanctions on Syria. I think the next step, and I think you agree with us that both Syria and Lebanon are opportunities for us. And we need to explore the opportunities with a careful eye on what's going on to make sure it stays on track. I think the next step, as far as I'm concerned, as far as moving Syria forward, is getting personnel on the ground there. And you and I talked about the possibility of opening the embassy. And I understand that this isn't a classified setting, but can you maybe describe for us the challenges of opening the embassy, why we haven't done it to this point, staying within the bounds of the
Yeah, well, it's entirely driven by security concerns. By the way, it's not the transitional authorities. We don't think they would harm us, but there are other elements on the ground in Syria that we have to be able to protect our people.
Important point.
And there are the ability, you don't just have to be able to get people in, you have to be able to get people out. We have all kinds of requirements that are there for a reason. If someone is hurt, do you have a medical evacuation plan? Can you secure a facility from an attack from an armed group, many of whom are still running loose in the country, unfortunately? It's one of the fundamental challenges the transitional authority is facing. On the broader point of Syria, I would say when Syria, if you look at the history of the region, when Syria is unstable, the region becomes unstable. And this has certainly been true after the Arab Spring led to the Assad rebellion against Assad, and that really destabilized the entire region. And then it turned Syria, frankly, into a playground for jihadist groups, including ISIS and others, that used it to operate and to destabilize their partners. So you have this change in December. And my view, which I've discussed with many of you individually, is the bad news is that the transitional authority figures, they didn't pass their background check with the FBI, okay? They've got a tough history and one that we understand. But on the flip side of it is, if we engage them, it may work out, it may not work out. If we did not engage them, it was guaranteed to not work out. In fact, it is our assessment that, frankly, the transitional authority, given the challenges they're facing, are maybe weeks, not many months, away from potential collapse and a full-scale civil war of epic proportions, basically the country splitting up. The good news is that there is a Syrian national identity. It is one of the places in the Middle East where Alawis and Druze and Christians and Sunni and Shia have lived and Kurds have lived alongside each other underneath the banner of a Syrian identity until it was broken by a butcher, Assad, who pitted them against each other. So they face a number of challenges. The first is they are dealing with deep internal distrust in that country because Assad deliberately pitted these groups against each other. He claimed to be the protector of the Alawis and the Christians and pitted them against the Druze or whoever else he wanted to, and the result is a deep level of distrust. The second is the displacement, upwards of 6, 7, 8 million Syrians living abroad. Very successful, by the way, in the countries they go to. But we need to figure out how we can enable the transitional authority to create an environment where they come back home, where they can come back to their homes, where they can help rebuild their economy. But what prompted the president to move quickly on sanctions? Because we had a plan. We engaged with the foreign minister at the UN here in New York. We gave him a visa to come into the country. We allowed their finance minister to come to World Bank meetings here in Washington, D.C. The next step was I was going to meet with the foreign minister, and some of you may have met with him already at Munich, but I was going to meet with him in Turkey at the NATO gathering. But the president had an opportunity to meet with al-Shara, and frankly, he made a bold decision. I'll do it. I'll meet with them under the Saudis and the Turks that encourage that. And the rationale and the reason is we need to, right now, the most important thing is that partnering nations, the nations in the region want to get aid in, want to start helping them, and they can't because they're afraid of our sanctions. So they don't. The lifting of the sanctions, its most immediate impact will be to allow neighboring countries to begin to assist the transitional authority to build governance mechanisms that allow them to actually establish a government, unify the armed forces under one banner and the like. But I want to be frank, that won't be enough. With the Caesar Act, we can issue waivers, but these waivers, because of expirations on them, are not going to attract the kind of foreign investment. Ultimately, there's going to have to be something done congressionally or more comprehensively to ensure that if the right steps are taken, we can create an environment for private sector growth that begins to provide economic opportunity to the people of Syria. But one last point I would make is the outcome in Syria will have a deep impact on what happens inside of Lebanon. because Lebanon, too, has been hurt by a combination of clashes at the border, but also they've had to assume responsibility for some of these Syrian
We
refugees.
believe that, by the way.
So the combination, if you think about a region, let's say 2 years from now, where Syria and Lebanon are stable, that opens up incredible opportunities around the region for all kinds of peace and security and the end of conflicts and wars. Obviously, this is a big task. It's big picture thinking, but it's a historic opportunity and one that we are obligated to try to explore and see if we can make it work.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I think we're in full agreement with this, and it is a conundrum as far as the sanctions are concerned. We've got the 6 months, but as you say, the future. It's hard to predict the future since it hasn't happened yet, as Yogi Berra used to say, and there are real issues and risks in the future. We can take it a step at a time. You issued a visa to the foreign minister. Senator Shaheen and I met with the foreign minister in Munich. You issued him a visa to come to New York, which was important to meet with other heads of state. Do you have the ability to do that for the president also?
Sure. I mean, we could, and there may be an opportunity to do that come the General Assembly of the United Nations.
Yeah, probably will be, and I think that's important. Let me, we do hear a lot of complaining and renting of garments over cuts here and there on our foreign assistance, but the number you laid out is absolutely stunning. That the United States contributes more to foreign aid than the next 10 countries put together. I mean, that's an absolutely stunning number. So I guess what you're telling us, before we feel too guilty about it, that we need to look around and compliment ourselves for what we are actually doing and have been doing for a long time. Fair statement?
Yeah, there's no doubt, and we want to do it in a smarter, more targeted way.
Yeah. Lastly, let me give you a minute on PEPFAR. People talk a lot about the cutting in PEPFAR, and I think virtually everyone here supports PEPFAR. But you've done some things to it to make it better. Can you give us a short dissertation on that? Very short, please.
85% of PEPFAR is functional right now. I know there was some hiccups on the payment systems, not the waivers, the payment systems, because it goes to Treasury. Treasury has to push the money out. And there were some hiccups, which I acknowledged in conversations with many of you, but we have fixed that program and the money's flowing. So 85% of PEPFAR is functioning and is operating. There was reduction in about 15% of or individual pieces of the program, but PEPFAR today stands at 85% of functionality. And when I hear these stories about, well, the money's like, we're moving money out of the building every single day, 20 million one day, 35 million the other. I mean, money is moving out the door. It's going to somebody. Some of it is going to pay for work that was conducted in December, January, February before the freeze, so we are paying back invoices on some of them. But most of it, a lot of it, is going towards ongoing programmatic activities that are approved and that we've, either through a waiver and or approval process, are moving forward on.